Oh, look at that. Did you see that infinity video? Okay, who here identifies as a designer? I don't know what the rest of you are doing here, but good on you for coming anyway. Okay, so I studied design. I studied product design, but not the kind of product design you think. I studied physical product design, like how to design chairs and cars and toothbrushes. And I wanted to become a designer when I was young because I didn't want a boring job, but I also thought that remote controls were stupid, and I didn't understand why there were so many buttons on them. Does anyone else have that problem? They seem completely pointless, and there's no understanding. And so, we have so many interactions with the world that confuse us, that create friction or pain. And designers, what do? We take that away, and we make things beautiful and wonderful, and it's sexy and enjoyable, right? That's our job, isn't it? Is it? So I'm very interested in the human experience and how design can be used to change the world. I'm actually a sociologist. I quit design school after 2 years because I thought I was learning how to create crap to sell to idiots. And I became a sociologist, majoring in sustainability, because I wanted to figure out why humans kept making the same mistakes over and over again. Like, why do they keep putting all the pointless buttons on the remote control? Like, why? These things keep me awake at night still, 20-something years later. And the thing that I learned in sociology, looking at politics and economics and cognitive biases, is that humans are a hot mess. We are a mess in here. And that's something that we as designers actually figure out how to exploit, don't we? And it's that intersection between the way we create things, the way we make beautiful, frictionless, often invisible experiences that can lead us down pathways of not the best intentions. But before I go on, I actually want to ask you guys to do something because it's late in the afternoon, and I know you've all been making lots of friends, but can you turn around and speak to someone you haven't spoken to and tell them why you became a designer in like 30 seconds? Go. Do it. Why did you become a designer? I told you mine. All right. For all of those people who didn't raise their hands about being a designer, that would have been very awkward for you, I'm sure. So we all have different reasons. In fact, when I first started teaching design many years ago, a lot of years ago, I would meet so many students who wanted to become a designer because they really wanted to design cars, or because they loved drawing, or because they had an obsession with pulling things apart as a child and their parents said, go to design school. There are so many different reasons why we become designers, why we use our creative capacity every day of our lives to create value for other people. And there are so many opportunities for us to use design to change the world, and that is what I want to talk to you guys about today. Okay, so a little bit about me. I run something called the Unschool of Disruptive Design. It's an experimental knowledge lab for adults that challenges people to think differently about how we design the future. We have over 15,000 students from, I think, like now 60 countries, and it's all based on the principles of systems, sustainability, and design. And we teach professionals how to career shift towards sustainability. And because of that, I was actually named Champion of the Earth from the United Nations. I shit you not. It is a real title. Like, truly, I have it for the rest of my life. And the most recent recipient of it was Sir David Attenborough. So, just say. It pays to give a shit about the planet. You will notice a slight gender problem in this photo, though. This is quite a common occurrence, I find myself, often around a lot of old men, which is a completely different conversation. But this award was great because it helped me get incredible opportunities to challenge mainstream thinking about what design is and the role that design plays in our lives. Design is this incredible, powerful, and influential force. Not just digital design, but physical design. Every type of design that we have at our disposal is used to create the world in which we live. It forms our bodies, our minds, our culture. It is one of the most incredible things that humans came up with. Don't you agree? Yeah. So why the fuck does it keep ruining the planet? It's so annoying. So at the Unschool, I do a lot of experiential stuff. I love challenging people to think differently. That's why I got you guys all to talk. I'll make you do something weird in a minute, just you wait. And we look at things like gamification and bias and all of the different ways in which we as designers or non-designers who are interested in using design, which is what the design thinking field got really, really successful of. Everybody got excited about the idea that this design, the magic box that somehow makes things work. Still, no one has solved that remote control problem, though, I must admit. It is still a perpetual problem. So anyway, the human experience is very complicated, as I said. And one of the things that I've learned is how to create analog experiences that change people's minds. It's true. I totally figured this out. And there's a few things that really work very well. And one of them that you're probably using is invitation. If you force somebody to do something, they're not very likely to do it. But if you invite somebody to do something, they have to implicate themselves by choosing to do it, right? So I used to run this dinner party game where I would put inside an envelope 4 random tasks that people had to achieve in the evening without telling anybody. So everybody at the dinner table would have them. And there'd be things like steal food off somebody else's plate, run around the table 5 times singing Mary Had a Little Lamb. And you weren't allowed to let anybody know that that's what you were doing. And the first person to complete their tasks would stand up and announce it. It's like bingo. And then, there was no prizes. It was just because people like, challenges and rewards. It's hilarious. Absolute pandemonium. What is that word? You know what I mean. That thing. Chaos. But brilliance. And the thing is that everybody would participate. Why would everyone participate? Because they were implicated. There would be a little note on the front that would say, here's a secret envelope. If you want to know what's inside it, you have to agree to abide by the rules. And so in the process of opening that envelope, they would implicate themselves in the journey. And so you'd get this high level of compliance. And then chaos, like true chaos. I always played as well, by the way. I wasn't just one of those like benevolent dictators who stood at the end of the table going, look what our disciples did. No, I would always do it and always fail somehow, like at my own game. Who's ever designed a game and then failed at their own game? It's actually the best way to learn because you see all the failures and points of friction. And I don't know why I'm not progressing. There we go. We also teach systems thinking. And one of the key things that I've learned over the years in doing these kinds of experiential education and trying to figure out how to give people the tools to make change through design is that the world is made up with complex problems and that we're not taught how to solve those problems. We're not given this expansive view of the world. So I created a method that we teach there called the Disruptive Design Method that combines a lot of different professional thinking tools from systems thinking, gamification, cognitive science, and combine that into like a kind of a methodology for enacting change through design. I'm going to talk about this in a little bit more detail in a minute. And actually, through my work, I also run a design agency. We design tools to help people make change. We have a lot of free resources, and they're very much utilized by businesses. We've collaborated with the United Nations, all about making change. So my whole design practice is how do you challenge people to think and do differently in the world so that we make the world work better? Because I don't know about you guys, I don't want to live in a world that doesn't have frickin' butterflies or bees or any of the other things that sustain us as a beautiful, only known life-sustaining planet in the universe. And for me, design is a critical point in this conversation about how we design a better future. So I also design games that like people can, I wanted to include this because you are UX designers and you probably all do a lot of digital stuff, and I just love analog. Who else likes analog? Yeah, games are the best, card games. I'm so obsessed with card games. This is a game called Designer Size because I would work with these people in industry and they were very boring. And I felt very sorry for them. Shh, don't tell anyone I said that. I felt very sorry for them because they were like, oh, I'm not creative. The creative people are creative. And I'm like, I bet I can make you creative. So I created this game called Designer Size, which is a total piss take off Prancer Size. If you know that video on the internet, bless you. If you don't, look it up later. Thank me later as well. So basically, Designer Size is a tool that is about using cognitive science to open the pathways for neurological creativity. There's like 20 games, and lots of people use it. It's really fun. I also created something called Game Changer Game, another card-based game. This is for not-for-profits to figure out how to create better campaigns around social and environmental change. I worked with the United Nations to create this thing called the Anatomy of Action, which is everyday lifestyle hacks for sustainability. They run a 15-day campaign quite regularly. It's designed for anybody to adopt different lifestyle choices like protein swapping, which is one of the quickest way to reduce your ecological or carbon footprint. I know being in Portugal, that's really hard to tell everybody, but eat less meat, people. It really does make a huge difference. Or pick better, lower impact proteins. There's like a whole hierarchy of them. But also just trying to make sustainability accessible, enjoyable. We use this Mematic, our hand. You guys have one, right? Do you have two? How convenient. And this idea that we take action every single day with our hands, do we not? We buy things, we scratch things. Don't know why I said that. Just was thinking all the things people, no, don't go there. Don't think about other things you do with your hands. That is not what I was talking about. I see you all in the front row snickering. Honestly, stop. It's very distracting. Okay, so move stuff, no. I forgot, I'm going red. There's a graphic that explains it. I'll just move on. Moving away from him as well. Bad news there. So these kinds of tools help people make change. If you go to Instagram, you can find the campaigns that the UN runs. It's based on science-based data, looking at if, collectively we all shift our behavior patterns, what kind of economic shifts would we have? Because every action we take as individuals feeds into that data set that then as designers and managers and product developers, we pore over to go, oh, people are doing this, let's do more of it. And so as individuals, we forget that we are actually designers of the future. And I talk about this as the idea of citizen designers of the future. So the choices, the economic choices we make, the things we click on, the things we buy, the people we vote for, all of these things matter. And I think that it's so important to remember that as designers, we are responding to those micro choices that individuals are making, but we're seeing it as a collective whole. And so if you think about it, we are on both sides of this spectrum. We are also able to help direct culture through the things that we create. So the thing is that we're in this very unique period of time. Right now, since the 1950s, geologists have argued that we have entered into a new geological epoch, which is a period of time measured in the soil, rocks, ice samples of the world. It's called the Anthropocene, anthro meaning human. Apparently, we're all humans. Some I would argue are not. And it is basically now like this international debate by the geologists to determine whether we've left what was called the Holocene, which was the last 11,000 years of stable climactic period that enabled humans to settle down, grow food, and populate a lot. So here we are in this time where we are, as a species, dominating every single centimeter of this planet. We have become the dominant force. All of our micro actions accumulate to create impacts on the world, and this is the only known life-sustaining planet in the universe. And as much as Elon wants to make you believe that you can all go and live on Mars, there is no freaking oxygen there, and I do not know how he's going to figure that one out. He can't even buy Twitter. That was a good joke. You should have laughed harder at that. I just come up with that on the spot as well. So, I mean, this is the thing. Like, we live on this planet that has this very thin, like, zone of life, the biosphere. It's incredible. Truly, I mean, I'm not even gonna go on about it, but like, these little guys called like worms turn into butterflies, that's fucking amazing. There's so much potential in everything, you know what I mean? I'm sorry I'm swearing so much, it's just I'm really trying to get you to wake up a little bit. So there's this other thing called, and also I'm talking about really quite heavy stuff. So there's this other thing called planetary boundaries. Who's heard of it? Nerds out there, bless you, love you. Talk to me at the bar later. So we're basically, scientists have come up with these 9 critical areas that the planet, if we exceed those areas, we will basically hit collapse. And of course, climate change is one of them. But so are these things that you're probably not aware of, which is the phosphorus and nitrogen cycles. Nitrogen meaning shit, basically. And how much of it ends up in waterways or how much of it is released into the atmosphere. Because we live on one planet which has very complex interconnected systems of which we are all a part. Every single second of every day, you put nature in your body, my friend. Back at you again. Don't start giggling. Because we are in an interdependent relationship with trees, but predominantly with microorganisms in the ocean, because about 50% of our breaths come from microorganisms in the ocean, which are currently dying off because of nutrient runoff from factory farms that animals have a lot of poop, they go into the water. You get the, who knows what I'm talking about here? Yeah, you get it? Excellent. Oh, you guys are all smart. I could just go now. This is great. Okay, so basically, we have all these boundaries, we're exceeding them. One of the biggest challenges that is not talked about is biodiversity. We're in the middle of what is called the sixth great extinction of our time, which is, we know are we running out of insects? Meaning there aren't as many as there used to be. And this is really critical to our food security and a multitude of other things. Trust me, I'm gonna get positive in a minute, guys. Just stay with me here. I know I'm going down a dark rabbit hole of depression. We will come out of it, I guarantee you. So we are at this really critical point in time. Around 9 million people every single year die of air pollution. We are literally creating the built environment that is heavier than all of the living organisms on our planet. We use 100 million tons of resources that we take from nature every year just to make your gadgets and your chairs and your clothes and everything else that you need to live. And so collectively, we have not only some moral obligation to figure this out, but like a biophysical need to solve the challenges of our time. And I truly believe that design is one of the best tools to get us out of this mess. And not to say that it's all designers' responsibilities, but we are the creative people that help to form the world in which we live. And we have this unique opportunity to make change in the things we do. And so when we talk about sustainability in design, I see it as this pathway to getting us out of this mess to a better future. One where we're not just sustaining the status quo, but we are actually restoring the systems that are around us and that we're being regenerative, meaning we're giving back more than we take. Because it's not good enough to make it somebody else's problem. You know, when I did my PhD, I spent a lot of time interviewing designers about why they didn't do sustainability. And a lot of them deflected responsibility onto other people. I'm just one person. I don't make any decisions. My boss makes all the decisions. Oh, China produces everything, so it's their fault. You know, everybody's just saying it's somebody else's fault. Well, if we keep doing that, then we don't take any responsibility or gain our own agency. Agency meaning our ability to see the power and influence that we already have and how we can use that to make things work differently. So who knows about ocean plastic waste? And the rest of you, what rock are you living under? Surprising, or your arms don't work. Is that what's going on? You're like, if I raise my hand, what will she do to me? Okay, so basically ocean plastic waste, major problem. Microplastics come from our clothes. What else do microplastics come from? Yeah, so like there was a big issue with microbeads in face washing. Who the fuck thought about doing that? Like, that was a stupid idea. They used to put like coffee grinds in there and then they put tiny balls of plastic. But actually, one of the major contributors to ocean plastic microfibers is car tires because they go bald. Haven't you ever thought about where all that plastic goes? Crazy, right? It gets washed down the drain. Anyway, the thing is that what we've discovered now is that microplastics, of course, they bioaccumulate through nature. So little fish eat them and ultimately big fish, and then we're the top of the food chain, so then we eat them. And so they found that, bioplastics are in our poop and also in most table salts. So people who think that this doesn't affect them, the reality is that these collective actions do affect all of us, no matter how rich or poor we are. And so it is within our realm of responsibility to figure out how we can solve the problems that we exist within. Very dramatic clicking. So I truly believe this is where we get more positive. Everyone okay? Do you want a moment? Do you need to process? Therapy, anyone? Whiskey, that's my solution. The thing is that every problem holds its own solution. And I truly believe that if we have more problem lovers in the world, then we would be very quickly getting out of a lot of these challenges. And what I mean by a problem lover is like somebody who is willing to take the problems that they see around them on a date. Like truly, because when you're on a date with someone, you're like, so tell me about you, what do you do? You're not like, oh, let me tell you all about myself. If you do that, it doesn't go very well usually. You're curious and you're trying to understand what's going on, because a lot of the time people assume they have the solution to the problem without understanding the problem. And therefore, we use our biases and our preconceptions to try and solve it or avoid it. In fact, one of the big issues with climate change is that it triggers fear, and the human brain has the amygdala and the emotional response where fear does what? Fight, flight, flee, right? So someone's either going to argue against you, freeze up and not like respond, or just run away from the problem. And we do this in multiple different ways. Like, I just told you a lot of problems, and I'm sure for those 10 minutes you were like, this woman is really boring. Except for the swearing, that probably kept you alive. And this is the problem, that we do not see problems as opportunities in disguise. We do not see these challenges as things that can help get us not only better career paths or products or services, but also get us to perhaps a better place in our own sense of self. So this is the concept of agency, the ability for an individual to see how much power and influence they already have and to exert that agency in the world. And we all have it. When we're little, we literally scream and all the adults do everything for us. Then we become teenagers and we just bitch at all our friends and we get other people to do things for us. Then we become adults and then we have colleagues and other people that we have to, be polite to. And we figure out how to navigate the world in order to achieve our own successes. So this is the concept of agency, that we are all able to influence the system. And if you connect to the idea of a sphere of influence, which is that over time, with the right intent, you can expand how much influence you have in the world. I mean, now you just need to go on TikTok and make really funny videos, and then you've got a lot of influence. But also just in our roles, in our careers, in our workplaces, with our clients, we have so much potential to expand our sphere of influence. If I think of my own story as a designer and how now I get to work with the UN and some of the biggest companies in the world, is because I picked something I was passionate about and I was able to use that as a tool to expand my sphere of influence. So I do truly believe that designers are these cultural provocateurs, meaning that we're always challenging and changing culture through the choices that we make. We are, whether you've got some like low-level job or a senior position, you are making decisions that impact people's lives every day. And that decision-making opportunity means that you can, with the right intent, help to create better outcomes. Not like what we have right now, where we use our knowledge and capabilities to manipulate people to buy shit that they don't need. I'm sure you're all familiar with the concept of dark patterning or deceptive design, where based on cognitive science and other user testing, we figure out how to get someone to click the button or respond or buy something they don't need. We know how to manipulate and fleece people of their money. And just because we know how to do that does not mean we should. This also extends to architecture. So there's this thing called hostile architecture, and you would have, every single city in the world has this, where the physical infrastructure, the shared infrastructure, park benches, railings, they're all designed to exclude certain people. So homeless people, unfortunately different people of socioeconomic positions, like in London and New York, the parks are gated, so people can't sleep in them at night. We have these types of benches that are designed for anti-sleeping devices. We have so much that communicates to certain people exclusion that exists within our design world, and we bring that into the digital space as well. We make digital experiences that are accidentally or intentionally exclusionary, and I think that this is something we really need to come to terms with. Like, we are not all the same. We have different levels of ability, neurodiversity. I can't spell, for example, just can't, really. Very bad at it. Anyone else can't spell? Yeah, my brain just doesn't see the letters the same way. They all float around inside my head. So essentially, we have used designs to influence people in different ways, to exclude them. And that unto itself is one of the big challenges that we have in design, because we need to think about the ethics of this powerful tool that we've created to form the world. And so I challenge you right now in this moment to think about this. Like, what is your moral code of conduct as a designer? We don't have a universal Hippocratic oath for designers. We don't pledge some sort of like, I promise I won't manipulate people to buy shit they don't need or ruin the planet. No, we don't do that. We are literally taught these tools of like cultural change, and then we go out and like sell our services to make money to then, change the world. So we need to take a look at ourselves as designers and the culture that we have and challenge ourselves to work differently. And so I want to give you like 2 minutes. That new best friend that you have that you just created a little social bond with, I need you to tell them, answer one of these questions. Oh, you all look so scared. So what are the ethics of what you do? Think about that. Like for me personally, I want to use design to change the world, and so I always reflect on what it is that the project that I'm working on and what kind of social good or environmental benefits will happen as a result of that. So I need you to do the task, everybody. You look very scared. We're all together. We're going to have drinks later. Like, you literally look petrified. How are you thinking? Go, do it. Then talk to your friends. Quick, answer one of the questions. You have 2 minutes. Sorry. Okay. Thank you all for sharing. So the thing about ethics is they're quite complicated. They're not cut and dry. Our culture, our experience, our ideologies, they all play into what for us seems to be ethical or unethical. And so it's not like there's one simple solution. And I hope in that moment that you were sharing with that other person, you started to develop something that's very important to us as designers, which is empathy, right? You started to understand somebody else's perspective. When we ask questions or we share, we actually build a social bond. And one of the key things about empathy is that it's not a mental thing, it's a physical thing. In our bodies, we have something called the vagal nerve. I like to remember what happens in Vegas actually doesn't stay there, because it's the nerve that travels down our spine from our brain to all of our primary organs. So does anyone here have a problem when they see someone else crying, they start to tear up? Yeah, so that's your vagal nerve. That is your empathetic response being triggered. Because we're social animals, and we have learnt to respond to other humans around us. We have these things called mirror neurons, which are neurons in the brain that mimic the behavior of others. Like if I just start smiling ridiculously at you, you can't help but start to smile. Cracked him. If you're on a train and somebody comes and asks for money and nobody in the carriage gives money, you're less likely to do it. But if you see someone else do it, you're like, oh shit, that's the new social order in this train carriage. I better get my wallet out, right? Because we have learned to become socially connected beings. And this really helps us achieve successes. And we learn to respond to other people. And so the empathetic response that we have is really critical. And we can expand and build our understanding of the world so that we are able to understand other people's perspective. Because this is so critical. I am not empathetic towards you. So as people, not just as designers, but as a human, we are locked into our own perspective of the world. Unfortunately, none of us, well, maybe AI can change this, but none of us will ever truly know what it is like to be somebody else, to live inside their brain with all of their joys and their fears and their traumas. We are forever locked into our own perspective of the world, which means that we often make decisions based on our own experiences, which create that exclusion. And so one of the things we need to do as designers or as people, as good citizens of the world, is be able to recognize our own bias and be able to step outside of that. You with your phones up are just really good, because I have a QR code here where you can download these free resources directly. So we created, when I got named Champion of the Earth, because that was hilarious, like literally when I got the phone call, I was like, hang on a second, and I was like Googling it to make sure it was a real thing, and I wasn't being scammed. But it was super funny because I was like, what does it mean to get this ridiculous title? And I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues where I was like, do you think I get superpowers now? Like, do you think I can fly? Obviously, that didn't happen. But we talked about the idea that everybody has everyday powers of influence. And so we made this superpower kit, which talks about some of the things that we can each have at our disposal and that we can expand, like the power of bias recognition. The power of bias recognition, or the power of ethics and empathy. And this is what I'm trying to get you guys to think about today, is if you want to be a designer that has impact in the world, a designer that you can look in the mirror and when you're 80 years old and be like, I did some good with that fun stuff that I did in the last whatever many years of my career, then you need to be able to have ethics and empathy, and you need to be able to recognize and transform your own biases. Because cognitive biases are everywhere, we all have them, there are hundreds of them. I like to call them brain glitches. They're shared social faults in reasoning and thinking, and there are many of them. One of my favorites is confirmation bias, where we seek out information that reaffirms what we already believe. Next time you're Googling, check which things you don't click on, because you're going to be avoiding things that would challenge you, and you're going to seek out information that makes you feel comfortable. The thing about the human brain is it's an energy efficiency machine. It's not a machine, it's very complex. But essentially, your brain will always try to find the quickest way to get to a solution. And so a lot of the cognitive biases that we experience are happening at a sub-processing level. And so we're not conscious of them, and we need to try and find ways of overriding them. Like, for example, the predisposition that we have to maintain the status quo. Because if we disrupt, then we might actually create an uncomfortable situation. But the thing is, the status quo is completely fucked up, and we need to disrupt it because the world is screwed, and we as designers and as citizens can help change that. Let's just look at the tech sector, for example. So there's less than 25% of programmers across the entire tech sector that are women. And in the AI industry, it's even lower. The majority of leaders in the tech industry are men, 83% of them are white. That is why we get such random shit, I think. This is from Facebook that just came out in July last year because it still had Facebook on it, and now called Meta. This is their reporting on their increase in female employees and leadership. And whilst, of course, they've made some improvements since 2014, you can still see that there is nowhere near equality when it comes to positions of power and leadership, and it's even worse for people of color. It's around 4% of people who work in tech are of color. So you really have this huge bias problem that exists when the majority of the technology that fills our lives is made by, Silicon Valley white guys, tech bros, I think they're called, who essentially bring their biases to the experience. And so one of the important things for us to do is to help challenge that and change that through our choices of expanding our sphere of influence, of educating ourselves and our colleagues, and working together to help get to a better outcome. But the problem is just knowing what our biases are don't actually solve them. In fact, a lot of studies show that when you're made aware of a bias, you have then this arrogance where you think, oh, I know that there's bias, so I don't have bias. It happens a lot with people. And there's also this issue where we, like I said, social proof, we really like we like people who look like us, basically. So what happens, whether that be people who think like us, or they have the same religion, or they have the same golf fetish, I don't know. We just have a tendency to find other humans who we associate with. And so because of that, we are always looking for proof of what is right or wrong. And I think one of the big challenges right now is that we don't have the conversation about what is right or wrong. We just do what we do. And that means that a lot of bad shit happens. And it happens because we are not thinking in systems. So one of the fundamental realities of humanity is that we are actually biological beings, and that we are deeply interdependent and interconnected with nature. And I'm sure you've all heard of this thing that is bearing itself upon us. Climate change is by far one of the biggest challenges that we have right now. And the thing about climate change, though, it's embedded in everything we do. It's not just oil companies or transportation. In fact, I hate to break it to you, but the tech sector has a massive ecological footprint. In fact, what's actually going on right now is that the tech sector is predicted to be one of the biggest energy consumers as we move into more digital-based environments, and of course, the Internet of Things, and everything is just constantly gobbling up data. And one of the challenges that we face is that as humans, we create linear systems. We create systems that are not like nature. Nature creates regenerative systems. Humans are like, let's just dig something out of the ground, turn it into a usable good, and then sell it, and then waste it, and put it back in the hole in the ground that we dug previously. That is called the take, make, waste economy. And it is what the circular economy is trying to override. I'm not going to go into the circular economy right now, but I have a lot of shit online if you're interested in learning more about it, and there's lots of people working on it. Because what I want to talk to you about is this thing called the internet that is actually physical. I don't know why, I thought it was kind of like not for a while. Like I thought it just happened. And then I was like, I'm going to look into this. And it turns out every email we send, every video we watch, absolutely everything we do on the internet has a physical, ecological, and climate impact. And the statistics are pretty high. So right now, we're looking at around 3.7% of carbon impacts associated with our collective internet usage, which is about the same as the airline industry. So we all talk about flying less. Well, you should stop Netflixing as much. That was also funny. Jesus, people, come on. I secretly just want to be a stand-up comedian, truly. And so these things, it's predicted to rise incredibly. And if you think about things like the density of our websites have changed a lot. So around, well, this is, you can see from 2010 to 2021, we've had like a four times increase in the like data hungriness of a, data hungriness, I just imagine like a hippo. What was this statistic? Oh, 4.6. This is how many humans, there's 7.9 billion people on the planet right now. This is how many humans use the internet regularly. So it's a large percentage of the human population that are online. This is how many servers there currently are in the world, 17 million servers. And 50 million tons is how much electronic waste is illegally trafficked and dumped in the world. Right now, fishing villages in Thailand that have no work because all the fish stocks got depleted are being forced to do illegal and hazardous e-waste processing because we do not have effective electronic waste systems in place, and most of our technology is not designed for disassembly or designed to be recycled. So we have this huge ecological impact associated with our addiction to technology. Not even to talk about the mining, the rare earth metals, you know, the wars in the Congo that are basically to continue to be able to enslave people, to collect the materials that we need for our circuit boards. You get the point. It's all a bit fucked up. So the point is that we have to understand that we are all part of that system and that we can change and challenge how that works. There are solutions. In fact, the tech sector, if they took responsibility for the products they created, they could design services around recapturing, recycling. We could dramatically alleviate these issues. And there's lots of work that's happening right now. So when it comes to sustainability in the digital space, you have this amazing web manifesto that is essentially talking about, I don't quite understand how one creates a regenerative website, but it is mentioned. I'm still looking into that. We have this whole field around green code, so coding so that it has less data intensity, so that we are creating lighter websites, lighter applications. Ugh, my words are getting all clean. There's these great websites where you can search to see how big a carbon impact your website or your design has. And there's this really cool one that's, Jesus Christ, God, that I just did for us today. So this is called the digital footprint, and you can go in and you can put any website in, and I put in Google. And so it tells you, it found me in Lisbon, and then it tells you the impact. So where my search is going to go when I Google, and then it's going to tell me how much of an impact my individual Googling had, and then it's also going to tell me how much carbon, like this is how far I could have driven if instead of doing my internet search, and then it tells me what that website's impact is, and the fact that Google have actually signed up to that sustainable web service. They have green servers. They've even got some that are like, you know, under the ocean, and then there's also servers that the residual heat are used to heat homes. So there's lots of, Iceland are all like, bring your servers to us, we have geothermal energy. And it gives you the information and a score on their environmental performance. And what this is doing is it's enabling us to get a full system perspective of what's going on when we design things or when we use them. Because right now, a lot of the impacts are hidden. And when something is hidden, it's very easy to ignore it or avoid it. And I think it's so critical that we really challenge the way that we create things. And one of the main tools for doing that is called systems thinking. Who here knows what systems thinking is? Oh, bless you all. We'll just have a little posse at the drinks, and we can nerd out together, and the rest of you are welcome to listen. But basically, systems thinking is a tool for thinking in a more holistic way about the challenges and problems that we face. That most people encounter a problem by what's called looking at the tip of the iceberg, when the majority of the issues that make a problem exist or a phenomena are actually embedded in what we call the mental models, that is our perception. Because humans created the world to meet their own needs, and any problem that we face right now is a production of our own society, of our own culture. And so we have the capacity to change that. And systems thinking is really about understanding the relationships that exist in the world, because most of the problems are also built on relationships. And so we have this opportunity to disrupt or intervene in those relationships. And there are multiple tools that you can use in order to adopt a systems mindset, going from individual parts to looking at the whole first, looking at emergence, which is how things evolve as a result of individual parts coming together. And with systems thinking, it's really about challenging the problems that exist today by making sure that when we design a solution, we do not make tomorrow's problems. Because unfortunately, we keep replicating the same issues over and over again, and this tool really helps disrupt that and forces us to understand the bigger picture before the parts. And to help my fellow designers, my friends who are all like, I do not want to talk to her later, she's scary. I created a method called the Disruptive Design Method, which is a tool for doing this. It's based on a construction metaphor, because if you see a building go up and the scaffolding around it, that scaffolding is only temporary. It's there to help create an exoskeleton so the building doesn't fall down until it's strong enough to do it itself. And so this method is that. It is not something to be addicted to. It is something to use in the process of transformation. And the way it works is that we mine a problem where we suspend the need to solve, and we look to really explore the issues. You all probably do design research, but this is where you put your biases on like vacation, and you take that problem on a date. You seek out pieces of information within that problem that you're trying to solve that you previously did not know or understand, and that are not filled with your own perceptions or pre-existing ideas. And from that, we take all these pieces that we find, and we put them together in a systems perspective, which is the landscaping zone, where we come up like we're in an airplane or we're a bird flying above the landscape. We put those pieces together and we see the full picture of the system that we're dealing with. And from that, we identify new insights and areas of intervention. And a point of intervention is anywhere you have agency to affect change, because it is pointless to deflect responsibility to other parts of the system. Every single one of us has the ability to affect change in the work that we do, in the world that we live in. And then the building phase is what you're all probably very good at. It is a more traditional design approach of iterating and prototyping and managing the trade-offs that exist, that inevitably exist when you're designing something. You always have to break an egg to make an omelet, and that egg could have been a new chicken. Thanks, guys. I'll be here all night. Should I just go now then? I've got a few more slides, but anyway, I'll just get through them with you all. So this idea of disruption is to interrupt the status quo, is to take the information, the knowledge, the power, the influence, the things that we have, and to form something new that helps create a better outcome. And the thing about this is the most important thing is to have the intent to make things different. Because when you have intent, you focus your energy and you can apply different outcomes to the problems that you're experiencing. So disruption is not about just messing things up. It's about understanding, and it's about working towards a new world, a new outcome. And this is what I call subversive design. So we talked at the beginning about all of the tools that we've been able to use to manipulate people to buy things or to click on things. Imagine if we use those tools to actually help direct people to better outcomes, to help create a more inclusive society. Imagine if we started to build ethics into the conversations we have with our clients about design briefs and the purpose and the point of what they're creating. Could you imagine how different our industry and the world would be if we took responsibility for the things that we created? There's so much opportunity for experiences to transform. I know how to make 20 people at a dinner table do really weird things. You guys probably know how to make people do very strange things on internet apps, which sounded very bad as well. And the future that we want to live in requires us to redesign everything. And this transformation is just waiting for you to come to it. It's waiting for you to see the potential and the capacity that you have and to design products and services that really do offer back more value than they take, and that hopefully as well can help create a more inclusive and sustainable and regenerative world. So I challenge you all to find ways you can disrupt the status quo, because don't ever forget we live in fucking magic. It's the only one, and it's all of ours to share. So thank you very much.